I stood at my daughter's front door with a smile and left minutes later realizing I was nothing more than a retirement plan to her. The porch light flickered above me, moths tapping against a bulb in frantic spirals. I balanced a pot of homemade chicken soup in one hand and a small bouquet of white lilies in the other. Laura always loved lilies when she was little. I could still picture her cupping petals in her tiny palms, asking why flowers were soft on purpose. I rang the bell, adjusting the collar of my wool coat. The door wasn't closed all the way. A crack of warm yellow light, and Ray's voices slipped through the gap. "No, Patrick, we can't wait another year," Laura snapped. "Your sister got her inheritance early. Why shouldn't my dad help us now?" "Because you won't ask him," Patrick shot back. "You tiptoe around the topic like we're begging. We're not. He's sitting on the equity of that house like it's sacred." My breath froze. I leaned back instinctively, as if distance could make their words less sharp. Laura's voice dropped, lower, more frantic. "We need that money. The baby's due in 6 months. We can't keep pretending everything is fine." A beat of silence. "Look," Patrick said, calmer, strategic. "He's old, he's alone, he's comfortable. He'll want to feel needed. Let him offer." The pot trembled slightly in my hand. I pulled a long breath through my nose, steadying myself. Then the door opened the rest of the way. Laura's eyes widened, shock first, then instant performance. "Dad, you're here." She stretched her lips into a smile, so quick it almost looked painful. Patrick's grin followed half a second later. "Henry, we were just, talking about the nursery. I lifted the soup and flowers like trophies of goodwill. Thought I'd stop by. Didn't want you two cooking after a long day." "Oh, Dad, that's so thoughtful," Laura murmured, voice slightly too sweet. Inside, everything looked perfect. Soft lighting, stage throw pillows, walls in immaculate beige. But the air was tight, tense, metallic. We sat at the table moments later. Spoons scraping bowls, forks clinking against plates. The TV murmured from the living room, noise without comfort. Laura kept smoothing her napkin as if it might fly away. Patrick leaned back in his chair like he owned the room. "So, Henry," he began casually, "how's the house holding up? Old places can be a lot for one person." "It's fine," I answered. "Quiet, but fine." Patrick nodded with exaggerated concern. "Must get lonely, though, after everything." His eyes flicked to the lilies now resting on the counter, a silent reminder of my wife. Gone 8 months. I swallowed. Some days are quieter than others. Laura finally spoke, still not meeting my eyes. "You're not thinking of downsizing, are you?" "No," I said lightly. "Your mother and I built that place. It feels like home." Patrick chuckled softly, as if I'd missed a joke. "Sentimental value is nice, but property that big? One person maintaining it? At your age? You could make a killing selling it." "Patrick," Laura whispered, a warning, but without conviction. He lifted his palms. "I'm just saying, it's smart planning. Future-proofing." I stirred the soup, forcing calm. "I have everything in order." "And your savings?" Patrick leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You must have a nice cushion from years of being a principal, plus Mom's insurance." I felt the temperature drop inside me. "I'm comfortable," I said. Patrick smiled, slow and confident. "If anything ever happened to your house, you could always stay with us. We'd take good care of you." There was something oily beneath his tone, a kindness rehearsed for the benefit of the listener, not the heart. Laura gave a small nod. A thin smile stretched over tension. "I wouldn't want to be a burden," I replied. "You could never be a burden," Laura said mechanically, eyes fixed on her plate. The conversation limped on after that, about baby names, weather, neighbors. but the room was full of unspoken agendas, and every clink of silverware sounded like punctuation. When I stood to leave, Laura hugged me stiffly, her face pressing my shoulder without real warmth. Patrick clapped my back like a salesman sealing a deal. "Drive safe, Henry," he said, as though he were my caretaker. Outside, the cold night wrapped around me, wind needling through my coat, streetlights humming. The lilies rustled inside the bag in my hand, their fragrance faint but undeniable. I walked down the driveway, each step louder than the last, my breath visible in the freezing air. A realization settled over me like frost. They didn't see a father or a man still grieving the love of his life. They saw a bank account waiting for instructions, a house waiting to be liquidated, a safety net they felt entitled to. My dignity had not been spoken of, but had been placed on trial in their dining room without my consent. I paused beside my car, soup container empty in my other hand. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, I let the hurt bloom fully. Then I swallowed it back down. I would not lose myself tonight. Not again.
Thomas's jaw clenched. "You're making a mistake. You think you'll be fine on your own, but you won't. You'll need us." "Need," I repeated softly. "That's the key word, isn't it? You wanted to be needed so I would be controlled." He tried again. "This isn't about control. It is," I said. "You plan to have power of attorney. You plan to move me to a facility. You plan to manage, meaning own, what I built and what I inherited." He had no rebuttal. Sarah's voice shrank into a whisper. "So you're punishing us?" "No," I answered. "I am protecting myself." The difference, and the dignity in it, landed hard. A relative at the far end spoke carefully. "Sarah, if you truly loved your mom, you could have waited. You didn't need to ambush her." Another added, "Especially not like this. Not in front of everyone." The humiliation was complete, not because I inflicted it, but because they orchestrated their own downfall. I softened my tone, not to comfort them, but to make sure the final truth landed without venom. "I love you both," I said. "But love is not the same thing as access, and love is not the same thing as ownership." Sarah's eyes filled with tears that didn't come from remorse, but from losing. Thomas shoved back his chair. "We should go." No one stopped them. Not one person. Sarah turned at the last second and whispered, "You ruined my birthday." I stood. "No, you ruined your character." She looked at me, eyes full of fury and hurt, then left. Thomas followed, jaw clenched, shoulders tight. When the door closed behind them, no one clapped. No one cheered. The room just breathed. A friend leaned over. "Diane, are you okay?" I nodded. "I am now." For the first time in years, I felt like myself. Not a burden, not a target, not a vessel for someone else's future. Someone whispered, "Good for you." Someone else murmured, "They didn't deserve you." I sat back down slowly, folded my napkin over my lap, and took a sip of water. The world didn't shake. The room didn't blur. My voice didn't crack. Power didn't feel loud. It felt quiet, earned, reclaimed. Sarah wanted her birthday to mark the beginning of a reign over my life. Instead, it marked the end of her control over it.
The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling, not dramatic, not explosive, subtle, a fraying thread that others might miss, but the one suffering it feels every snap. It started small. One afternoon, I arrived early to pick up Emily from school. I stood in the kitchen while Laura packed her backpack. Patrick glanced at my phone as I checked the time. An old flip phone, durable, simple, all I ever needed. He smirked. "Wow, Henry, I didn't know they still made those." I smiled politely. I'm not much for apps and notifications. "I can tell," he chuckled. "It's like watching someone use a dinosaur bone." Laura laughed. Not loudly, but it was there. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, my grin steady even though something inside deflated just a little. A week later, I found out Emily's spring performance had happened 2 days earlier, through a photo posted online. A row of children on stage, Emily in the center holding a paper violin, smiling proudly. I reread the caption a dozen times. So proud of our little star. Not a single tag or message sent to me. When I asked Laura about it, her reaction was quick, flustered, performative. "Oh, Dad, I swear I told you. You must have gotten the date mixed up. I'll send you the video later. Okay." She didn't send it. I didn't ask again. Then came my birthday dinner, quiet celebration at their house. Patrick handed me a gift bag with a wide grin. "Hope you like it. Henry." Inside, a cheap pair of slippers, the kind supermarkets display in clearance bins. Laura clapped lightly, forcing enthusiasm. We just thought it would be cozy for winter. I smiled, as I always did. "Thank you." Patrick immediately chimed in, not missing a beat. "Oh, did we tell you? We picked up the new Range Rover last week. Fully loaded. It's a beast." He tapped his phone vigorously, pulling up pictures. 83 grand before taxes. But hey, you only live once, right? For a moment, I sat there with the slippers in my hands while they scrolled through photos of leather interiors and panoramic sunroofs, their voices growing louder, brighter, proud. I set the slippers on my lap gently, like they were fragile. Maybe I looked strange for doing it, but I wasn't protecting the slippers. I was protecting myself. Still, I didn't confront. I didn't question. I didn't accuse. There's a kind of dignity in restraint. Or maybe I was just afraid to know the truth fully. The final straw, or what should have been the final straw, was brunch. A large table at a bistro downtown, sunlight hitting champagne glasses, the smell of pancakes and smoked bacon in the air. Patrick's parents, his sister Meg and her husband, a few friends, a full table. Patrick was in rare form, charismatic, loud, living for the spotlight. I sat at the end beside Emily, who played with a crayon. Patrick raised his glass. "Let me tell you all something crazy about my father-in-law." Laura laughed before the story even started. A cue. Patrick continued, projecting his voice so other tables could hear. "So when Laura was in college, Dad here sold his car, his classic Mustang, just to pay tuition." A few chuckles around the table. He shook his head theatrically. "Can you believe it? Could have invested, could have built wealth, could have turned it into something big. But hey, that's old-fashioned Henry. Heart before numbers." Someone, I think Meg, said softly, "That's actually kind of sweet." Patrick laughed harder, pushing beyond it. "Sweet? Sure. Smart? Not so much." More laughter. Soft, polite, embarrassed. I stayed down at my plate. My hands trembled slightly beneath the table, hidden from view. Emily scribbled with her crayon, oblivious. I exhaled slowly, steadying the shake. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind them that selling the car was an act of love, not foolishness, that I wanted Laura's future to feel possible, not fragile. I didn't say that watching her graduate was the proudest moment of my life. Instead, I said nothing. A man lives a long life and learns that not every moment deserves a battle, but silence can still feel like bleeding. Later in the meal, someone asked me about retirement. I began gently. It's been an adjustment. Losing Melanie took time too. Laura cut in immediately. "Dad loves being retired. He's just being dramatic. He gets bored when there's not enough attention." Everyone laughed lightly, as if it were a harmless joke. I blinked, swallowing. Well, what I meant was, Patrick tapped the table. Is old-fashioned. He gets emotional about everything. I stopped speaking. A full sentence died in my throat. The waitress approached to offer refills, but her eyes flicked between us with the kind of discomfort strangers get when witnessing private tension in public. The smell of cologne from the man across the table suddenly felt suffocating, like it coated the air. The champagne glasses clinked again, the cheer of others while I sat quietly unraveling. Every word that followed was noise. "What do you think, Henry?" "Dad!" "Henry!" But I didn't speak unless necessary. The conversation flowed around me like a river that no longer needed my shape. When the bill came, Patrick slapped his card down with a flourish. "Don't worry, old man. We've got you." I didn't argue. I didn't thank him. I simply stood and helped Emily put on her jacket. On the sidewalk afterward, while everyone said their goodbyes, Laura looped her arm through Patrick's and gave him a playful nudge. "We survived brunch without you embarrassing anyone," she teased him. Patrick grinned. Always a win. Their eyes passed over me like I was scenery, useful when needed, unseen when not. I turned to leave, adjusting my scarf. A gust of wind cut through the street, lifting napkins off a nearby patio table. I caught one midair without thinking, handing it back to a server. She smiled softly. That brief moment of simple kindness felt more human than everything that had happened at brunch combined. Walking to my car, I replayed the laughter, the jabs, the interruptions. Each memory felt like a pebble added to a growing pile. Kindness used to be power, the ability to uplift, to protect, to provide. Now it felt like permission for others to take. When did that shift happen? When did generosity become weakness? When did grace become invisibility? I sat inside my car and closed the door, shutting out the noise of the city. I placed my hands on the steering wheel, steady now, and breathed in deeply. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want control. I didn't even want apologies. I just wanted to feel like a father again, like a man worth something beyond his bank account. The engine hummed to life. I pulled onto the road slowly, letting the world blur past the windows. I had spent my entire adult life teaching young people to treat each other with respect. Now I was learning my own lesson very late. You cannot teach dignity to people who don't value it, but you can protect your own. And something inside me, something quiet but solid, decided right then that I would. I decided to tell Laura about the inheritance on a Tuesday afternoon, sunlight warm, sky clear, the kind of day where good news belongs. I picked up fresh pastry from a favorite bakery, the almond-filled one she used to beg for as a child. I rehearsed the moment in my head as I drove, how her face might light up, how it might feel to give her a future free of financial fear. I imagined holding Emily someday on the Brighton Pier, her curls whipping in the ocean wind. When I reached the house, I didn't see Patrick's car in the driveway. Good, I thought. Just father and daughter, maybe a chance to reconnect without performance. I walked up the front step, pastries in hand. The door was unlocked. I let myself in gently, the way she'd always told me I could. "Laura." I called softly. No answer. I stepped further into the hallway, the smell of fresh coffee, vanilla creamer, and scented candles. I heard her voice in the kitchen, bright but sharp. She was alone, talking on speakerphone. And once Dad tells us what he's planning to do with his money, we steer him gently. I stopped. My heart didn't race. It stopped. Not panic, not rage. An eerie kind of stillness, the body recognizing danger before the mind forms words. Patrick's voice crackled through the speaker. "Gently how?" Laura sighed like she'd rehearsed it. "He doesn't need a financial advisor. I'll handle everything. I'll show him how overwhelming taxes can be. Paperwork, legal stuff. He'll be relieved to hand it over." She laughed. Not loud, just confident. Patrick laughed, too. Smart. And hey, if he moves in someday when he gets older, that villa goes on the market immediately. Manchester real estate sells fast. We'll get top dollar. I felt something cold and unnamable spread through my spine. Laura kept talking, mechanical and strategic, stirring her coffee while planning my obedience. Once he trusts me with the accounts, I'll start reallocating things. He's sentimental. He won't even notice. A moment of silence. Patrick's voice again, lower, smug. He'll sign whatever you put in front of him. Just play the loving daughter. He's desperate for closeness. My grip tightened around the pastry bag. The crinkle of paper sounded impossibly loud. I didn't think. I simply froze in place. Laura added, soft but sure, if he just gives everything willingly, we don't look bad. He'll feel like he's doing the right thing. That's the key. My mind went strangely quiet. No anger, no heartbreak, just clarity, sharp, surgical. I stepped back slowly, careful not to be seen. Not leaving, escaping. I returned to the front door, turned the handle with painful patience, and stepped into the daylight. The bag of pastries trembled in my hand. I set it gently on the porch railing, not as a gift, but because I no longer wanted to hold anything connected to that conversation. The wind blew, cool and unforgiving, carrying the smell of cut grass from a neighbor's yard. I walked to my car with the kind of control people mistake for calm. Inside, I sat still until my breathing returned. I thought of every memory, every scraped knee I'd kissed, every school project I stayed up helping with, every sacrifice I never once regretted. And then I thought of her voice, flat, calculating. Just play the loving daughter. There are moments that break you, and there are moments that build you into someone new. This was the second kind. I drove straight to Richard Bond's office, not because I had planned to, but because instinct knew what dignity needed before my brain could catch up. The law firm lobby smelled of polished wood and leather, old money, quiet authority. A receptionist greeted me politely and led me to Richard's office. He stood when he saw me. Henry, you look worn. I sat across from him. Tell me, Richard, is everything finalized? He blinked once, adjusting to the abruptness, then nodded. Yes, I got the last confirmation yesterday. The Brighton villa, the 2 Manchester apartments, all rental income, all accounts, fully transferred. 0 disputes. Everything is officially yours. He slid a stack of documents toward me, stamped, signed, sealed. I looked at them without touching them. The weight of wealth, the kind others would kill for, felt lighter than the weight of what I'd heard in that kitchen. Richard studied my face quietly. Henry, talk to me. I didn't say what happened. I didn't repeat a word of the phone call. I simply asked, do you remember when Melanie died? How you told me something in the hallway? He nodded slowly. I said grief turns us into versions of ourselves we don't recognize. No, I said softly. The other thing. Richard leaned back, thinking. Then his eyes softened. Ah, yes. I said money reveals character. I inhaled slowly. It does. He nodded once, a sad recognition between old friends. Did someone just show you theirs? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Richard wasn't the kind of man who filled silence with chatter. He let quiet do the teaching. Finally, he said the sentence that shifted something tectonic inside me. Sometimes love that depends on ownership isn't love. I closed my eyes. It was almost too much truth for one breath. He leaned forward, voice gentle, not legal. Henry, you're not weak because you're kind. But unguarded kindness attracts people who only know how to take. A long silence stretched, heavy but clarifying. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. What should I do? He didn't give an answer, at least not the actionable kind. He asked one instead. What do you think dignity looks like for you from this point forward? I didn't respond immediately. I looked down at the estate folder, at the embossed gold stamp, at the signatures confirming my financial future. Then I remembered the conversation in the kitchen, the tone, the strategy, the confidence that my trust was guaranteed. My voice came out quiet, but unshakable. It looks like not giving my life to people who only want my assets. Richard nodded once, approval without pride. Then that's your compass. The meeting ended without handshakes, just mutual respect. As I walked toward the exit, I paused at the door, turning back slightly. Richard. Yes. You were right. Money reveals character. He gave me a sympathetic smile. And sometimes it reveals your own value to yourself. Outside, evening clouds gathered, wind cutting colder than the sky suggested. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, cars passing, city noise buzzing around me, everything hurt. And yet, for the first time in months, I felt awake. Pain had become clarity, and clarity was the beginning of something I hadn't felt since before Melanie died. Strength. I invited them for dinner the following Friday, not with anger, not with revenge in mind, but with clarity. I worded the message simply. I'd like to talk as a family. Come by at 7. Their response was instant. Laura sent heart emojis. Patrick followed with, absolutely, looking forward to it. The exclamation point was a giveaway, excitement, not affection. The night came with steady rain, needles tapping windows. I set the table simply, nothing dramatic. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. A meal from quieter years. At 7:04, their car pulled up. The headlights swept across the living room. Then the doorbell rang, too many times in quick succession. I opened the door. "Dad!" Laura exclaimed, throwing her arms around me, perfume thick and unfamiliar. Patrick wore a broad grin and held a glossy gift bag. "We brought you something," he said cheerfully, almost theatrically. I stepped aside. "Come in." They walked in with exaggerated warmth. Coats flung, compliments tossed like confetti. Patrick set the gift on the table. "Top shelf whiskey. Thought you deserved the good stuff." Laura kissed my cheek again. "You look so sharp." "Dad." "New shirt." I shook my head. "Old one." They laughed as if I had told a joke. We took our seats. The clock ticked on the wall, steady, unignorable. Rain whispered against the glass. Patrick folded his napkin with anticipation. "So, Henry, this family talk. Sounds important." Laura added quickly, "If it's paperwork or anything confusing, don't worry. We can help. You shouldn't stress yourself." I took a sip of water. "I'm not stressed." They exchanged a glance, a silent signal. Conversation faltered during the first few bites. They were waiting, timing their performance. Finally, Patrick leaned forward. "So, what's going on?" I placed my fork down with care. "You remember my cousin in the UK?" They nodded immediately, overeager. "Yes, of course," Laura said breathily. "You mentioned something ages ago." "I did," I replied. "And the estate has been finalized. All of it." Laura's breath hitched, a tiny gasp trying to hide itself. Patrick straightened in his chair. I continued with slow precision. The villa in Brighton, the 2 rental apartments in Manchester, all bank accounts associated with the estate, completely transferred. Their faces lit up, almost synchronized. Patrick actually whispered, "Holy shit," before stopping himself. Laura reached for my hand across the table, gripped tight, eyes glossy. "Dad, I'm so happy for you. This is huge." I didn't squeeze her hand back. She pulled hers away after a moment, quick flicker of confusion in her eyes. Patrick's voice came next, smooth and rehearsed. "This is life-changing for the whole family. We'll make sure everything is taken care of. Taxes, transfers, you don't need to worry about any of it." Laura nodded rapidly. "We'll handle everything. That's what family does. We're here for you, Dad." I looked at both of them. "You're right. Family should be here for one another." Relief washed over their faces. Then I said the next sentence. "Everything has already been transferred into a trust." Silence detonated across the room. The clock ticked. The rain hit harder. Neither of them inhaled. Laura's lips parted. "A trust?" "Yes." Patrick spoke next, voice no longer warm. "Who controls a trust?" I didn't raise my voice. "Diane and I." Patrick blinked. "Diane? The neighbor? What the hell does she have to do with anything?" "She is the co-trustee, and the terms are simple. The trust is for educational purposes only. It will cover Emily's schooling, elementary through university. No one else benefits." The chair screeched across the floor as Laura stood abruptly. "Why would you do that? Why would you cut us out?" I stayed seated. "I didn't cut your daughter out." Patrick jabbed a finger in my direction. You're punishing us because we need help. Laura's voice shot up in pitch. You know how hard things have been. You know we're planning for our future. I folded my hands in my lap. I know, and I also know what I heard. They froze, guilt flashing in their eyes like headlights. Patrick forced a laugh. You misheard something. Whatever you think you heard. Patrick, I interrupted quietly. I heard everything. He shut his mouth. Laura took a shaky step closer. Dad, we were just talking. People vent. That doesn't mean anything. It meant enough to plan how to steer me, how to get me to sign whatever you put in front of me, how to sell property the moment I moved in. She flinched like I had slapped her. You're twisting things. No, I said, calm as stone. I just finally listened. Patrick slammed his hand on the table. You owe us, after everything we've done for you. I raised my eyes to his, steady and unblinking. Tell me what you've done for me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Laura, shaking, whispered, You're turning your back on your own family. I shook my head. No, I'm protecting my granddaughter's future, and I'm protecting myself. She began to cry, sharp, dramatic sobs. You're choosing strangers over your own blood. Diane is not a stranger, I said. She is someone who cares without expecting ownership. Patrick scoffed. Oh, so now she's your family? A neighbor? I didn't move. She's decent. That's all it takes. Laura sobbed harder. You're breaking this family, Dad. No, I said, barely above a whisper. I'm refusing to let you break me. The room went quiet again, a suffocating kind of quiet. Rain lashed the windows now, wind rumbling down the chimney. Patrick shoved his chair back violently. Come on, Laura. We don't have to sit here and be insulted. Laura didn't move at first. She stared at me through tears, searching my face for something. Guilt, regret, weakness. She found none. Finally, she whispered, I needed you. I nodded once. But you didn't want me. You wanted what I could offer. But that's the same thing. No, I said gently. It isn't. She collapsed into quiet crying, not theatrical now, just lost. Patrick grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. We're leaving. She let herself be led, looking back only once, hope in her eyes that I might call out, apologize, chase a relationship I'd spent a lifetime maintaining. I didn't move. She stepped outside. Patrick slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. And then it was over. The room was still, except for the ticking clock and the rain hammering the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. I sat there in silence, hands folded, breathing slow and steady. No fury, no triumph, just peace, costly, aching peace. I knew the consequences, distance, coldness, maybe estrangement. But I also knew something else. Justice doesn't always rule. Sometimes it sits quietly, with a spine straight and a heartbeat steady, and simply refuses to be taken from again. I remained at the table until the rain softened, and my breathing matched the rhythm of the falling drops. My family wasn't gone. The version of it that took advantage of me was. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet, not peaceful, but muted, like the house had been wrapped in thick velvet. My phone stopped ringing. Messages from Laura dwindled, then disappeared entirely. Instead came the indirect pressure. A cousin called out of nowhere. I heard there's been tension. Maybe it would be good to sit down and talk things out. Money can make people overreact. An aunt sent a voice note about family duty and children supporting their parents just as parents support their children. On Facebook, Laura posted vague quotes about betrayal from the people who should protect you, paired with somber photos. Then Patrick uploaded a picture of the new SUV with the caption, "A man should take care of his own family, not leave them hanging." I didn't respond. Silence is not weakness when it's chosen. When Patrick hinted at legal action, through a mutual acquaintance, never directly, Richard Barnes sent him a single email. The trust is airtight. Any attempt to interfere will be met with legal and criminal consequences. The threat stopped. In the absence of drama, I focused on Emily. I picked her up from school when Laura allowed it. We worked on her solar system project together. Foam planets painted on my dining table, glitter everywhere. I attended her piano lesson, quietly clapping after each song. We went to the park, where she raced her scooter down the path while I timed her with the old flip phone Patrick once mocked. Emily didn't know about the conflict. She just knew I showed up. Those small things kept me tethered to who I wanted to be. Not just someone who fought to reclaim dignity, but someone who still gave love where it belonged. One afternoon, a month after the dinner, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Laura standing there. No makeup, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't angry, just tired. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Hi, Laura. Come in." She stepped inside cautiously, as if unsure whether she was welcome. I gestured toward the living room. We sat opposite each other. No dramatic music, no cinematic tension. Just two people who had known each other all their lives sitting on opposite shores. Her voice cracked first. "We've had a hard month." I nodded. "I know." She twisted her hands. "Patrick's furious with you. He thinks you're punishing us." "Is that what you think?" I asked. She looked down. "I don't know what to think anymore." Silence stretched, not hostile, not comfortable, just honest. Then she spoke again, slower. "When I was younger, I always felt safe because you were there. You always fixed everything. You always figured things out. Somewhere along the way, I started thinking that was just your job." I didn't interrupt. She wiped her cheek. "I didn't look at you as a person, just as security, someone who would never say no." Her voice broke. "And when you finally did, it felt like abandonment. But now I realize I abandoned you first." My chest tightened, not with pride, not with victory, but with grief. I answered softly, "I will always love you, Laura. That has never changed." She looked up, eyes hopeful, terrified. "But," I continued, "I will never let love be used as a leash again." She nodded slowly, absorbing it rather than fighting it. "I don't want your money, Dad," she whispered. "I know," I said. "You want me, but somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself you needed ownership to keep me." She covered her face for a moment, not in drama, but in shame. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't need to fix everything tonight," I said. "You just have to start seeing me as a person again." She let out a shaky breath. "Can we try?" "Yes, as long as trying doesn't mean taking." She nodded. "I understand." We sat a while longer, not hugging, not apologizing in grand declarations, just breathing the same air without masks. Before she left, she asked, "Can Emily still come over next week?" "Of course," I said. "My home is always open to her." "And to me?" she whispered. "To you?" I answered. "When you come as my daughter, not my beneficiary." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she smiled. "Small, real. I can do that." She stepped toward the door, then paused. "Dad, thank you for protecting Emily's future, even for me." I absorbed the words, unexpected and unpolished. She left without a dramatic goodbye, closing the door gently behind her. The house returned to its quiet rhythm. Clock ticking, kettle steaming, birds outside the window. But it didn't feel like lost this time. It felt like a beginning built on truth instead of dependency. There were still fractures, mistrust, guilt, distance. But there was also something new, a chance that didn't require self-betrayal. Justice doesn't erase love. It just makes room for healthy love to return. I poured myself tea and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the rain begin again. Softer this time, more like a lullaby than a storm. 6 months later, My life was divided between two worlds, the familiar comfort of my old home and the calm expanse of the Brighton villa. I spent spring here, on the coast, where the wind carried salt and the seagulls cried with unapologetic honesty. The house wasn't extravagant, just peaceful. White stone walls, soft blue shutters, wooden floors that creaked in places. If you left a window open, the ocean drifted in like a guest that never needed an invitation. Most evenings, I sat on the balcony with a mug of tea, feet propped on the railing, the horizon stretched in a straight, endless line. It didn't feel like escape. It felt like breath, the first deep one in a very long time. My laptop chimed one evening near dusk. A Zoom call. Emily. I answered, and her face filled the screen. Cheeks flushed, hair messy from play, eyes bright with a kind of innocence untouched by the world's hunger. Grandpa, look! She aimed the camera at her piano sheet music, then back at her own hands. In the background, gentle notes floated, halting, imperfect, beautiful. The teacher gave instructions faintly. Emily nodded proudly. That's wonderful, I told her, and I meant it with every cell in my body. She went on to tell me about her school art fair, her best friend Lily, the new kitten named Marshmallow who bit toes at 5 a.m. I laughed more in those minutes than I had in whole months during the year before. Laura appeared in the background for a moment. She didn't push into the frame. She simply waved from the doorway, a soft smile on her face. No requests, no hints. No financial desperation disguised as affection, just presence. After the lesson ended, Emily hugged the camera. I miss you. I miss you too, I said. I'll be home soon. Promise. Yes, promise. She grinned and ran off. The call ended. The screen went dark. My phone buzzed right after, a message from Laura. Not dramatic. Just a photo, Emily at school holding a science project ribbon. Underneath it, 3 words. Thank you, Dad. Not for money, not for gifts, just for being there. I set the phone down, and the sound of waves filled the quiet. I had spent a long time believing love meant giving until I was empty. It took losing too much to learn that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors for real connection to walk through. Pain had been the teacher. Clarity had been the graduation. The wealth didn't give me strength. The trust didn't give me power. The change happened the day I stopped trying to earn a place in my own family. Silence, not anger, rebuilt my backbone. I didn't lecture anyone. I didn't humiliate anyone. I didn't fight to be seen. I simply stopped allowing myself to be used. And somehow, in that space, slowly and clumsily, love found a way to retain, not on demand, not on conditions, but in small, human gestures. A photo, a wave from the doorway, a child practicing piano for the sheer joy of making sound. The sun sank lower, dripping gold into the water. I stood, sliding the balcony door closed softly behind me. The glass hummed as the wind pressed against it, the last rays of daylight spilling into the villa. My phone still felt warm in my hand from talking to Emily. I looked at the quiet room around me, simple, uncluttered, peaceful. I wasn't celebrating a victory. There was nothing to parade, nothing to broadcast. Just breath, just stillness, just the earned knowledge that I had survived myself, my old patterns, my hunger for approval, my need to feel needed. Some victories don't sound like applause. Some truths don't need witnesses. I turned off the light, the sea now only a faint roar outside the window. Sometimes the quietest victories are the loudest truths.